Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome into this special edition of the Green Room that we're doing, the free agency / trade deadline for baseball edition of the Green Room. I'm Garrett Greene, and we're going to break down all of the most important moves in the NFL and in Major League Baseball as the trade deadline approached, and as we just got back underway with football under the new collective bargaining agreement. And in the initial stages of signing free agents, the New England Patriots looked like they were the team that was making the best moves, but then here come, no pun intended, swooping in the Philadelphia Eagles. Here's what they did in free agency that's worth note. They traded Kevin Cobb to the Arizona Cardinals and got back Rodgers-Cromartie, a shutdown corner that was a position they really needed to fill. Then Vince Young, who was released from the Titans, signs a one-year contract with the Philadelphia Eagles to try and learn under Michael Vick and be his backup, which could be very key with Vick's physical style of play, and the off chance that he could possibly be injured, they would have a good second option to go to. Remember, Vince Young is a 30-17 career record as a starter in the NFL. And then the big news, when it looked like it was between the Jets and the Cowboys weren't really interested in the Nnamdi Asomugha sweepstakes, here come the Philadelphia Eagles. They come in and sign Nnamdi Asomugha to a free agent contract, and then the very next day, what do? Sign defensive end Cullen Jenkins, who played for the Packers last season, bring him in, and then make another splash, bringing back a former Eagle, Jason Babin, who played for the Eagles back in 2009 and was with the Titans this past season. Now, a couple of quick notes about Cullen Jenkins. Last season, he played 11 games, had 18 tackles, and 7 sacks. So a good presence off the end. And then the other end, Jason Babin, had 16 games, 58 tackles, 12.5 sacks, and 2 forced fumbles. Now, granted, this was the first time in his career that he had more than 5 sacks in a season. He played the first 3 seasons of his career with the Houston Texans. He had 4, 4, and 5 when he was there. Then he spent a year with Kansas City back in 2008. He only played 7 games and had 2 sacks. Only played 2 games with Seattle back in 2008 as well, and he had no sacks while he was there. Then, as mentioned before, in 2009, playing with the Philadelphia Eagles, only had 2.5 sacks. So you have to wonder if he's kind of a product of a system that they have down there in Tennessee. Either way, great moves by the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, as we mentioned, another guy who came out of that system for the Tennessee Titans, Albert Haynesworth, moves to the New England Patriots, who got him for a 5th-round pick. They're paying $5 million. That's a drop in the bucket for the Patriots. And then they also acquired Chad Ochocinco. The first target that Tom Brady will have to throw to will be a really big target, besides Randy Moss only. The second one he'll have in his career. Should be interesting what they do in New England. As mentioned, the Cardinals get the quarterback that they've desperately needed ever since Kurt Warner retired. They bring in Kevin Cobb, and they also sign free agent Todd Heap, who was cut by the Baltimore Ravens as soon as the as free agency began. And the Bears, it seems like they're just the next stopping point for a bunch of former Cowboys. Roy Williams, Marion Barber, and Sam Hurd, all of whom were released by the Cowboys, all signed with the Chicago Bears. Now we're going to do quote-unquote quick hits here, go over these. I'll give my quick opinion on what I think about this. Matt Hasselbeck goes from the Seahawks to the Titans. Good for the Titans. They don't have to throw Jake Locker out there. Gives them an experienced quarterback, but not a guy who's going to be able to be there for a long time, in my opinion. Darren Sproles goes from the Chargers to the Saints. Now, this is after the Saints traded Reggie Bush to Miami, where he will be the primary back. But now they have a great 1-2 punch with the power in the power game of Mark Ingram, who they just drafted out of Alabama. And then they also have that specialist quick guy in Darren Sproles. DeAngelo Williams re-signs with the Panthers. The Panthers also get tight end Greg Olsen from the Chicago Bears. So great weapons there. And they signed the #1 overall pick, Cam Newton, to his contract. So he'll have a couple of weapons to go to in his first season as a quarterback in the NFL. Now, Tavares Jackson moves from the Vikings to the Seahawks, and he has been named the starting quarterback there. Interesting move, in my opinion. I know that Tavares Jackson has been solid as a starter, but I feel like you probably could have kept Matt Hasselbeck there or given Charlie Whitehurst a chance to try and be the starting there. He will compete for the starting job, but right now it's Tavares Jackson, and Sidney Rice follows his former teammate, leaves the Vikings, and goes to the Seahawks. So interesting to see there. So there's another target that he'll have to throw to. Also have Mike Williams on the opposite side of the ball, who's resurrected his career there in Seattle. Plexico Burress, who was reinstated into football after being released from prison, stays in the same stadium, but a different team. He is now a New York Jet, and they really need to sign a couple of wide receivers. They also re-signed Santonio Holmes, but they're still looking to re-sign Braylon Edwards. Should be interesting to see if they manage to get that done after they bring in two major weapons. Now, sticking with the Jets, Brad Smith leaves them and goes to the Bills. He was their wildcat kick returner, punt returner, also a wide receiver, very key in that kind of unconventional offense that the Jets ran last season. Really a big hit for them. Also interesting to note, since we're going through a bunch of wide receivers, Randy Moss and Terrell Owens are both still available as wide receiver free agents, so look for them to land somewhere. Teams will need a couple of those guys. They're big, tall, strong receivers who can still be productive. Steve Breston left the Arizona Cardinals, and he now goes to the Kansas City Chiefs, so count it as another weapon for Matt Castle to throw to. He's got Dwayne Bowe, he's got Steve Breston, got Jamal Charles in the backfield, who's also great out of there, so it should be good to see what Kansas City is able to do. Maybe, just maybe, get a playoff win this season. Mike Sims-Walker goes from the Jags to St. Louis, which is good news for all of you Sam Bradford fans out there, because now he actually has what most people will call legitimate receiver to throw to there in St. Louis. Dante Stallworth leaves the Baltimore Ravens and goes to the Redskins, but it's kind of a shame they still don't have a quarterback. I know everybody's saying John Beck is their quarterback, but let's be honest. I made a list of my top 32 quarterbacks, and John Beck was number 31. So Washington really needs to get themselves a quarterback. Nick Barnett, who was part of the Super Bowl champion Green Bay Packers this last season, goes to the Bills. Jonathan Joseph goes from the Bengals to the Texans, and that's a good move for the Texans, who are looking to shore up their secondary. He's not a Nnamdi Asomugha, but he was just about the next best guy that they could go after, and especially bringing in Wade Phillips, it should be interesting to see what they can do. And the Texans also get Daniel Manning from the Bears. He's a safety, so looking to really solidify that defense. Don't really need a ton of help on offense there with Matt Schaub and all those guys, so should be interesting to see what Wade Phillips does in his first year as a coordinator there. Matt Moore goes to the Dolphins after he started in Carolina off and on this last year. Jimmy Clausen took the job, but Matt Moore finished the 2009 season strong for the Panthers, so he will apparently be the starting quarterback there in Miami. Stephen Bowen goes from the Cowboys to the Redskins, which really hurts the Cowboys, who are looking to shore up that spot at defensive end. Also, they were probably looking to sign Cullen Jenkins. He gets away. Ray Edwards goes from the Vikings to the Falcons, so the Vikings losing guys left and right. And Bruce Gradkowski, I know this isn't a big one, but Bruce Gradkowski, who is with the Oakland Raiders, goes to the Cincinnati Bengals, and that could be key because they could maybe do what they did with the Giants a couple of years ago, where Kurt Warner started half the season, then they brought in Eli Manning. Put a guy out there who has in-game experience while the rookie learns the system, and then you can put him out there. So it should be interesting to see. He just might be your day one starter for the Cincinnati Bengals after Carson Palmer has reportedly retired. Now on to Major League Baseball. We'll start with the two clubs who made it to the World Series last year, starting with the Giants. They get Carlos Beltran and shortstop Orlando Cabrera. Interesting to bring in those guys. Should be really good. Beltran, of course, being an offensive weapon for them. Solidify the shortstop position. Interesting moves for them. And then the Texas Rangers make two key moves to shore up what arguably everybody called the worst part of their team, the bullpen. They trade Chris Davis and Tommy Hunter to the Orioles for pitcher Koji Uehara. I hope I'm saying that right. He will be with the club through 2012 as long as he makes 12 more starts, which barring injury, he should be able to do, or 12 more appearances, excuse me. This season, he has 47 innings pitched, a 1.72 ERA. He has 62 strikeouts compared to only 8 walks. Lefties are batting a meager 146 against him, and righties are only going 171 against him. And, of course, this will be good. Chris Davis can get that weight lifted off his shoulders of having so much expectation. He has just never been able to translate going from the minor leagues to the major leagues. Kills it down there in the minor leagues, but just cannot do anything. Change of scenery. Buck Showalter as his new manager should be good. And, Tommy Hunter now has an opportunity to work himself back into a starting rotation after losing his spot to Alexi Ogando this last year. And the Rangers gain another guy from the San Diego Padres. A lot of people thought they were going to get Heath Bell. Instead, it's Mike Adams that they bring in. Now, he's 3-1 with a 1.13 ERA in 48 relief appearances, and he can be a closer or a setup guy. And yet again, key thing, he will be he signed through 2012. So you're not going to lose him like you would Heath Bell or Cliff Lee, what happened last year. So the Rangers bring in two solid guys who could be a 7th, 8th lead to Feliz, or if Feliz needs to move into that 8th spot, or if Feliz moves to, a starting pitcher role next year, then Mike Adams can be your closer. A lot of versatility for the Rangers. Now, the only thing is that in order to gain Mike Adams, they had to give up two good prospects in Erland and Whelan. And Whelan threw a no-hitter for AA Frisco just a few nights ago. So, interesting move there. Getting rid of a couple of pitching prospects, but going for it all again. They feel like once they get Adrian Beltre back, they should be in good shape. And a couple of final things. The Astros are dumping players trying to get prospects. They deal right fielder Hunter Pence to the Phillies, and he'll be able to fill into that right fielder spot where Dominique Brown has been starting. And the Astros also send center fielder Michael Bourne to the Braves. Good for them to give them a little bit of speed on the bases. And then the Pirates also gain outfielder Ryan Ludwig from the Padres, so the Padres dumping guys off. And last but not least, the big deal this year, Ubaldo Jimenez dealt from the Rockies to the Cleveland Indians. They are 2.5 games back from the Tigers in the AL Central. Well, thanks for sticking with us through all of this one. Check back in. We'll have more updates, and we'll, of course, start making this more of a regular thing once we get into college football and you have more baseball going on. So stay tuned in. Until then, I'm Garrett Greene. Have a good evening.